Hey everybody, Kyle Goth here from GoatFilmReviews.com and the Goat Film Reviews YouTube channel, and I've got my first reaction to the new documentary film, Scala, or it's got another long term, Scala, or the incredibly strange rise and fall of the world's weirdest cinema and how it influenced a mix-up generation of weirdos and misfits. I think that's the whole thing. I really should have written that down. The film is directed by Ali Catterall and Jane Giles, and it chronicles the rise and fall of the Scala cinema in London. It's particularly location at the King's Cross, where they had basically a collection of the really riotous, like, strangest movies that you could get. Basically, the things you wouldn't catch at your local cinema, the things that, had been out of print or difficult to find prints. And we're talking about, like, the weirdo films, the exploitation films, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of movies, the hard to find pieces of cinema, the ones that no one else wants to see. Sometimes there was seemed like softcore films that played there as well. So really, like, anything you couldn't catch at your local cinema, you could probably catch at one of its all-night movie marathons. I loved this documentary. I thought this was fantastic. I've never really heard about the Scala cinema before, and I feel like I'm on the outs of this because there was interviews with people like Mary Harron, John Waters, number of actors who had actually gotten their start there, as well as people who worked at the Scala Cinema during that time period from like the late 70s to the early 90s. This story is wild, but it also chronicles just kind of like the behind the scenes everyday life of being at the Scala, as well as the various films that would be showing there. And I spent a large portion of the movie as I was watching it kind of jotting down movies that were mentioned that sounded interesting that I'd like to watch. One of those movies that creates another watch list, like those super horror docs. The Scala has a number of, how do I put it best, kind of vignettes during that time period. It's presented in chapter form as kind of like we go through parts of the Scala's existence in its various locations, as well as the things that eventually kind of caused its undoing in the market. And I found that incredibly fascinating. I'm a big person when it comes to movies about movies. They always kind of say, like, the Academy Awards loves movies about making movies, and I get that that's a good fault, I guess, maybe, but I also love movies about movies. So, this is not a documentary that I'm going to recommend to people who don't care for the weirdo cinema, but for people that are always looking for the next potential thing to fall in love with in the world of film. I think the Scala has a really interesting story. It reminded me a lot of the Sparks Brothers documentary that Edgar Wright directed a few years ago, in that it's kind of a niche portion of pop culture, especially for a time period. But the people that were into it were really into it. They were really delved into it, and it was kind of like, how did you not know about this situation? And kind of like, I think I heard the name Scala Theater, but that was probably the most I'd ever really been involved with it. In the same way that I had heard the name of the Sparks Brothers, and I probably heard a song or two of theirs, but I'd never really gotten like that background. So this movie just expanded upon it, taught me a lot of things I didn't know, and I was incredibly taken with it from beginning to end. I almost didn't want this movie to end. It's a nice 96-minute runtime, just cruises through to the finale. I kind of wanted more afterwards, and in fact, I kind of wanted to watch it again almost immediately after. But it was a screener that got sent to me, and I really just wanted to kind of check out the film again. So this is probably going to end up being one of my favorite documentaries of the year. I will say this, purely from a documentary filmmaking standpoint, it is not like a heavily influential stylistic documentary, but its source material, its subject matter, is so heavily stylized that you feel like the movie kind of gets a contact high from it. It is not, there's no like new filmmaking techniques that really change how we view the subject material. It's just that the subject material itself is so strange and quirky that it elevates the documentary that's being made about it. I don't think there's a way you could make a documentary about the Scala and not have that kind of, pop punk kind of like feel to it, where it's just got this vibe that just pervades the whole movie. It kind of makes me wish that I could at least have experienced one of their all-night movie marathons, and then get tested afterwards. But it's such a peculiar place that I would hope to check it out. The venue is still around today. It just doesn't do theater and movies, but I would like to see the Scala beyond just seeing it through the lens of the film. And I think that's the definition of what a good documentary would do, is it gives you the complete story, but makes you want more information, makes you want to go get a book. I wrote down like the book that they got some of the information on. I'm like, I plan on reading it. So that's a solid documentary in my book, and one of the films that I'm going to be talking about at the end of the year. So those are my thoughts on Scala, or the really long title that I can't honestly remember anymore. Leave your thoughts on the film down below once you've seen it, and let me know if you knew anything about the Scala beforehand, or any of the films that popped out to you in the film, and if you think they would be right fits for that kind of venue. Let me know. I'd love to talk to you about it and learn more about it from people that may know a little bit more than I do on it as well. So leave your thoughts down there. You can check out goatfilmreviews.com for my many written reviews, as well as Goat Film Reviews on Facebook. You can follow me at Almighty Goatman on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. And you can find my show, Kyle and Nick on Film, that I co-host with Nick Plotchuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. We have new episodes of that show every single week. You can also check out the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. There's a link down in the description for that, other local film critics, as well as my personal reviews. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.